She's believable. Why is she believable? Natural. She doesn't look like she's acting. That's why she's so good. She literally doesn't look like she's acting. So you believe her in every role she's playing, even though you know, watching her on the screen, that she's an actress. That's talent. Now, would it matter how long any of us went to acting school? Me included. Wouldn't, would it? No. Most of us haven't got a hope in hell of achieving that kind of ability. So this idea of acting, going to acting school, learning how to act, which is what they teach a lot of people in the corporate world, this is just stupid. Because you won't look like that. You'll look like a bad actor. Name some bad actors.
Reagan.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan, Keanu Reeves. Right? You will look fake. You will look awkward. This is the interesting point, though. Can you be a bad actor and still be successful? Yes. Name some really successful bad actors. Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise always comes out and it polarizes everyone. Most of the blokes go, yeah, fair enough, crap. And the ladies go, oh, I don't know. Has its good points. Who else? Yeah, Keanu Reeves. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Hi guys, so pleased to be here. Sylvester Stallone. There's a reason Stallone doesn't do Shakespeare. You imagine Stallone as Hamlet. To be or what? Yes, he looks good. But this is the interesting thing. Why are these bad actors so successful? In fact, arguably, the bad actors are the most successful actors. Why? Exactly. They only ever play one part. They always play themselves. Has Hugh Grant ever been anyone other than Hugh Grant? No. Has John Wayne ever been anyone other than John Wayne in any movie he's been in?
Never.
They play themselves. And we like the person they're playing. And all we want to do as a paying audience is see that character just shoved into different situations. That's why they're so successful. Because we like them. Because they play themselves. What's the lesson for everyone here? Be yourself. If you're not Kate Blanchett, your only option is to be yourself. Everything else will look crap. And will look fake. One of the most common things that people say to me is, oh, you're so natural on stage. Well, that's because for the most part, I am just being myself. I really am this bad. I really am this non-PC and everything else. Right? So that's one of the key things you have to learn from a communication point of view in leadership. First and foremost, you must be yourself. We love people who are genuine, and that's all we ask of them. For the most part, the best speeches you have ever heard did not come from people like me. They did not come from professionals. They came from people amongst your friends and family who spoke at a funeral, or spoke at a wedding, or a 21st. And they were probably clumsy and awkward and technically hardly proficient. But they were genuine. And they spoke from the heart, and you loved them for it. And in leadership positions, unlike here when you come into Toastmasters and you're competing and you're getting up and doing your speeches and receiving evaluations and so on, in leadership positions, when you're communicating with people, you're not actually judged on your skill or your technique. First and foremost, you're judged on how real you are. Can I trust what they're saying? Do they believe in what they're saying? Is this a real person in front of me? Are they genuine? So that's the first part of the equation. If you want to be an effective communicator, then you have to be genuine. You have to be yourself. There are no other options. Don't even bother trying. Go with the person who got you there. You all do it at home, do it everywhere else. So I often say to the guys that I work with as CEOs, let's be perfectly honest here. If you spoke to your friends and family the way you talk to half the people at work, they'd think you were a wanker, wouldn't they? And most of them are having the kind of reaction that you're having now. Yeah, probably. And the follow-up question stops them laughing. So why do you think the people at work think any different? I have this theory that a lot of people in leadership positions, and you see it in Toastmasters as well, thrust into the role of Toastmaster or something like that, or the meeting chair and so on. They have in their head a certain way they think they are supposed to sound, and a certain way they think they are supposed to look that's commensurate with their role. And because they're not Kate Blanchett, they walk around for years on end doing a really piss-poor impression of whatever that is. And the only thing that we know for real is that it's not real. And how many times have you sat in a meeting where someone's got up that you know personally and that you've seen in the meeting off and on and chatted with and maybe you're friends with outside of Toastmasters, get up and they become a Toastmaster and you just sit there going, what are you doing? Why are you talking like that? You don't talk like that normally. Why are you using those words? No wonder you're stumbling over them. It's the first time they've ever come out of your mouth. You don't need to change who you are. Just be yourself. You can still bring everything that the role requires, even if you're playing a character. Like our good friend Captain Silvertongue. Is that your official name? I reckon the name you wanted to go with was much better. Was it Foul Wind Jackson? See, we're on the outside looking at it, let's be honest. The ship last night, I wanted to name ours the Sphincter. Not doing that, they said. Why would you call it the Sphincter? I said, we've got a tight crew! Just take a moment and clench. I'm the one going to hell, you're just watching. So first and foremost, you've got to be yourself, and you've got to get rid of this idea that you have in your head that for some reason you're not good enough as who you are. You are, you're fine. Any role that you're playing, you're fine. Just be yourself, be genuine. People will love you for it. The rest of it is actually about structure. It's not about the skill and delivery stuff. Most of what we teach in Toastmasters is actually not true. In the sense that either it's just out and out wrong, or it's only true in certain situations, in certain applications. You take some of the most basic things that we teach people in order to build up some confidence. Eye contact. What do we say to people? Always maintain eye contact with the person. Sure, unless you're talking to Pacific Islanders. Then maybe not such a good idea to zeroing on them. I'm talking to you, you go. One of the other guys was saying, yeah, even simple things like handshake. We say squeeze firmly. Now there are certain cultures where squeezing someone's hand like that would be offensive. See, the rules change depending on who you're talking to, depending on where you are. So they're there to give you those clear parameters so that you can feel a bit more secure and that you can grow and learn and try things out. But out in the real world, stuff changes. And those rules are there to be broken a lot of the time. And it's knowing when and where to apply them. Despite everything you've ever been told, when it comes to communication and leadership, content matters more than delivery, full stop. The greatest orators in the world are proof of this. Name some great orators, people that you consider well. Mandela, yeah?
Churchill.
Do Mandela for you. When I first learned about this from Robert Island prison, you know, look at them. Mandela, go back further in time. Martin Luther King. Churchill. Lincoln. Cicero. Yeah, Hitler. Not that in his day. Alright? All great orators. But here's the interesting thing. Have you heard them speak? No. For the most part, you haven't. Most of us haven't, even those that we have heard speak, we haven't heard the whole speech, we've heard bits of it. We've heard Martin Luther King say in little news clips, I have a dream. And that's about it. We haven't heard the rest of the speech. We actually haven't judged them as great orators on their speaking ability at all. Lincoln had a crap speaking voice. Apparently really whiny and high-pitched, quite unpleasant to listen to. The reason that we consider them great orators is because we've read the speeches. It's the words that make them great, not necessarily the delivery. Shakespeare, by that definition, is a great orator. Content matters more than delivery. Getting that right is really what everything is about. In the World Championship, think about this. What wins? The best delivery or the best speech? You've got 8 or 9 people up there, more or less, all of the same ability in terms of delivery. They can all do the individual components that we've been taught. There's not a lot to differentiate them in that regard. It's actually the speech that works, as long as it's delivered. Is this making sense so far? All right. So, it's all about the content, it's all about the structure. It's about learning how to put that together properly and making it work. The great news about that is that's a relatively simple thing to do. Everyone can learn that. Everyone in this room can do that. You cannot change your speaking style very easily. There are only two types of people who can completely and convincingly change their speaking style depending on who they're talking to. One, the very highly skilled, world champions of public speaking, that sort of thing. Hi, how you doing? The second group are sociopaths. Now, if you're a sociopath, no problem. I'm not making any moral judgments. I just prefer to be paid up front. If you don't fall into either of those two categories, it's not about changing who you are. It's about changing what you say. And that's something that everyone can do. But you have to understand how to change it. Now, there's a massive communication gap that exists in organisations. This is how big it is. When we survey leaders within organisations and ask them to rate themselves in terms of their communication effectiveness, on average, and it doesn't matter who conducts the survey, whether it's Gallup or Tom Peters or anyone else, 90% of organisational leaders rate themselves anywhere on the scale from somewhat effective to very effective. When we ask the people who work with them, for them, alongside them, to rate those same leaders in terms of their communication effectiveness on that same scale, the percentage that agree that they are anywhere on the scale from somewhat effective to very effective, on average, 25%. That's a big gap. Now, I'm prepared to be generous today. I'm prepared to accept that you people are well above average, that you do not have, within your organisations, wherever you work, you do not have a 65% communication gap. How much above average would you like to be? I don't care, I'm generous. How about 100%? 100%? Comfortable with that? Some of you are thinking, yeah, that's fair. 100%. You're 100% better. So you don't have potentially a 65% communication gap in your organisations from a communication point of view. You only have a 32.5% communication gap. Virtually a third of everything that comes out of your mouth is completely ineffective. Because this is the problem with all this research. The scale's wrong. There's no such thing as somewhat effective. You either are or you aren't. It's like pregnancy. You can't walk in and say, look, I might have got Shaz a little bit pregnant, but jury's still out. It doesn't work that way. So that's a huge gap, isn't it? That's a massive problem. You think about the time wasting that's involved there. You think about the lost opportunities that are involved there. The sheer cost, as you're about to find out. And you think to yourself, why is it that people think that they're so effective when clearly they're not? And the answer is this. Everyone would agree, and I'm sure everyone in this room would agree, that effective communication is probably the most important skill set, if you like, that any leader can bring to the organisation. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
Certainly well up there. Be in the top 5, if not number 1. And that's why, because you all agree with that, and you all know how important it is, that's why you'll all be able to tell me what effective communication is. Fire away.
Transfer of understanding.
Sorry?
The transfer of understanding.
Yeah. Laurel is 25% right. A quarter of the equation. Oh, and you've now got another quarter. So we're now 50% there. So you've got understanding. What else do you think?
Listening to action.
Listening. Oh, God. I'm going to have to destroy one of these myths very quickly. All right? Listening. You'll hear a lot of people say the most important skill in communication is listening. Not true. Not true at all. It is important, but it's not the most important. Why is it not the most important? Because no conversation ever starts with listening. Try it. Go on, here we go. I'll do it with Dennis right here.